But just letting everyone know that this session is recorded. You probably saw a notification about that anyway when you joined, but I'll just let you know. How's my background noise? Are you getting any background noise on my end?
You sound fine to me.
Okay, good. Okay, well, it's 9:05 Australian Eastern Standard Time. So I think that's a good time to start. So welcome everybody for attending our webinar today, this morning, tonight. How to prepare a speaking topic and submit a conference. What's CFP actually stand for? Call for presentation?
Yeah,
I'm always unclear whether it's papers or presentations, but I think presentations makes more sense, don't you?
Yeah, depends whose conference it is. It's all the same thing, really. Yeah.
Yep. All right. Can we go to the next slide, please, Beck? So before we get going, we'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the various lands on which we're meeting today. We pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging, and pay particular welcome to any First Nations people that are part of this call. So thanks very much for attending. We have Lydia Giuliano here to share some of her vast amounts of wisdom. We've only got a certain amount of time, so Lydia's going to contain her wisdom to just assisting people to think about topics that they can present at a conference. We're specifically talking about the AusCERT conference because that's what we do, but this information is relevant to any conference or meetup or any sort of speaking opportunity. So we have Mike Holm with us, Senior Manager at AusCERT. Beck Chep is here, our Business Manager. Beck has her camera off at the moment. And my name is Mark Henry-Smith. I'm a Principal Analyst at AusCERT. So without any further ado, Lydia, would you like to take it away?
Sure. Get back to move us to the next slide. Firstly, I want to thank AusCERT for inviting me to come and talk to this topic. I've done this a few times and I believe it's helped a lot of people, so it's a real honour to be able to be invited by AusCERT. Some people may or may not know me. I've been in security for a long time, since I was about 25, so quite a long time. I'm almost 50, so that tells you how long I've been here for. I've spoken at a lot of conferences, webinars. I sit on a lot of review boards, so probably about 5 or 6. I've listed them there, and I read hundreds, close to thousands of these things a year. So hopefully I have a bit of expertise to share. And I just love reading them and I love helping people. So even after this, if any of you, prepare your paper for AusCERT, reach out to AusCERT or myself. I'm always happy to help any way I can. So Beck, I'll get you to move to the next slide. I've also tried to make this fun by putting silly emojis of myself. So I don't know how much it resembles me, but so the topic for this morning is obviously I want to help people brainstorm an idea. So if anyone's brave enough to put their hand up, I'd love to be able to work through that in real time. And then the latter half of this will actually talk about what the abstract or presentation outline should be made up of. These are the things that I look for as well. And then obviously I'm going to refer to Beck, Mike and Mark just to see what they're looking for as well from an AusCERT perspective. I am going to be talking general sense, but then I'm going to make it really specific. If there's any questions, please feel free to ask any questions at any time. Beck, I don't know if that feature's enabled. Maybe we can raise your hand, but we'll figure that out. I'll let Mark and Mike figure that one out. Beck, I'll get you to move to the next slide for me. Oh. All right, so the first thing that I actually wanted to do a poll, but I don't know how to do a poll in Teams, so I've made it generic. But a lot of the times when people say it's a goal for them to speak at a conference, and I will ask them, okay, so what's holding you back? These are typical things that I tend to hear people say. They don't know which topic to pick. They have no idea what they're going to talk about. They're scared they're going to be judged. That's a big one. So imposter syndrome's a big one. they don't feel they have the expertise. To me, that falls back into the imposter syndrome bucket, because I think everybody's got something to say. I think if you go out to the pub with a friend and you just ask somebody questions, everyone's got something to say and something to share, something exciting to talk about. So I think everyone's got something to share, and I think in security we're doing such great work that everyone's working on something exciting. Or they might say, I want to wait for a few more years, and I think that comes back to the imposter syndrome thing a little bit. So I'm thinking that somebody, for people that are on this call, you're probably going to fit into one of these areas. If not, I'd love to hear what is holding you back, or what's stopping you from talking, or maybe you just want some ideas on how to formulate something. So something that I talk about throughout this talk is, and you can see down the bottom, don't be your own judge and jury. Right, it's really, really, really important. Let the conference decide if it is a fit. And something else I talk about later is accepting versus declining of a talk, not rejection. I really, really, really dislike the word rejection. You aren't rejected. It might not be a fit for that particular talk, or it might be that there's too many DFIR talks, for example. I know if I may talk, for example, for B-Sides Melbourne, we had a huge abundance of DFIR talks, but we didn't. But it's not a DFIR B-Sides Melbourne, as an example, you know. So it may be that there might be an excellent amount of talks on one subject, but you really only want 2 or 3. So there's many reasons why a talk might be declined, and it's not always because you weren't good enough. So I think that's really, really, really important to know, and it's always really important to get feedback, which I should touch on at the end, but if I forget, folks, just remind me. So let's move to the next one. Now, I think I've got this picture of myself. As Mark touched on before, I've got massive imposter syndrome too, and I'm scared. And you can see here that I've spoken at some conferences that I would never ever think that I would ever speak to. One of them was Black Hat many moons ago, and the other one was when I spoke at KiwiCon/QuaiCon a few years ago as well. And I was as nervous as hell. I think the thing that's really important to know is we talk about the judging thing. It's your work, your experience. If someone is going to come to you and pick the bones out of your talk, they're not the ones up there talking, you are. You're the one that's been selected. And I think it's really, 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 really important to remember that if fear is holding you back, if someone had expertise in the topic that you're presenting on, they would be up there talking, not you. So you really, 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 really need to back yourself. It's so important to back yourself. And I can even say, I can't see too many women on the call today, but as a woman in security, I feel that doubly a lot. And so, you know, as men and women and binary folks in this industry, it's really important to back your work and your research. And if you're going to speak to somebody at the end of a conference, you know, give them constructive feedback. We don't criticise, you know, did you think about this? Did you think about that? Because we're all here to sort of grow and uplift the industry. So there's a bit of me. We'll move to the next slide. So I think what I'd like to do, with everyone's permission, if someone is brave enough to put their hand, because we're all here to sort of explore something that you would potentially like to present at AusCERT. I mean, who wouldn't? AusCERT's a massive conference. It's definitely on my bucket list one day to do. And who wouldn't want to go to sunny Queensland? Let's be honest. And the team at AusCERT have got so much support for their speakers. This is one of the things that I absolutely love about AusCERT. You know, we want, as conferences, to support our speakers in any way that we can. So it's really, really, really important. And I think when we say, what have I got to talk about? When I explore this with people, I always ask them these questions, you know, what are you passionate about? What do you love about security? If someone says to me they got into security for the money, you shouldn't be talking at these conferences. You know, when someone talks to me about what do I love about security, you can see someone's eyes light up. Oh, I love doing this, or I love doing that. That's what you need to be talking about. You know, what are you working on at work? What are you building at home? I know when, you know, we were in lockdown and the ComfyCon crew were looking at talks and things, there were a couple of people that said, hey, let's still talk about how to build your lab at home, because we're all in lockdown and we had nothing else to do. You know, and people think that, you know, that's one of the things that you never find time to do, is build your own lab at home. So you know, it could be anything. Maybe you're building a device at home, or maybe you're monitoring things at home, or maybe you're working on some sort of funky cloud project or some DevSecOps project at work that you're allowed to share. That's obviously very important as well. Or you've just got some side projects. You know, some of my side projects is malware detonation and detection, and that's some of the things that I try to do when I'm chasing kids around. Haven't done it for a while, but they're things that you can talk about. So I think if guys, if anyone's willing to put their hand up, does anyone want to sort of explore a topic that they're looking at submitting to AusCERT, or some bounce around some ideas that we can talk through? I don't know. Oh, there we go. We've got Peter that's willing to put his hand up. Are we able to get him on speaker?
Kia ora, how are you?
How you doing? Thanks for putting your hand up. I appreciate it.
Sure, I'll see if I can put it down as well. I don't know if, oh, there we go. Yeah, nice to meet you. I've presented a few conferences, did a couple in Singapore last year, but lifelong learner, so always keen to improve in what I'm doing, and I've got one that I was keen to bring to the group, and keen to get your insights and kind of work through the process. Obviously helpful for me and hopefully helpful for others.
Absolutely, absolutely. So is it something that you've submitted or something that you're exploring to submit?
I haven't submitted it yet. I wanted to have this call and again go through this exercise to refine the idea, right. And hopefully, yeah, make it a little bit better. Always, as I said, always on a continuous improvement journey.
Okay. All right. So let's talk about I suppose the idea. We can sort of, because I always look at it in 3 points, which we'll go through in the next slide, but I don't want to do it just yet. We talk about there's a gap, some sort of problem or something that you've seen that you go, there's something here that we can do a little bit better, or there's a gap, and then sort of talk about, I suppose, the steps that you've done to solve it. Is that sort of the sort of thing that that you're looking at doing? Or anyway, we'll discuss the idea. Sorry, sort of going off on a tangent there.
No, that's all right. That's no problem at all. I suppose by way of background, kind of my experiences in OT or ICS cybersecurity or industrial cybersecurity. Yep. I lead a team of consultants and engineers that support industrial organisations, mainly across New Zealand, but we've done some other work as well. Experienced practitioner, and uniquely I come from the control systems ICS side, yep. Functional safety engineer and similar. The topic that I'm keen to bring to AusCERT is related to the 5 ICS cybersecurity critical controls. Some material that's been developed out of SANS. I'm a SANS instructor as well, and the gap, to your point there, I think is a thirst, as I see, for useful, pragmatic, realistic, achievable improvements in security in this kind of niche, sometimes complex, hard to understand arena of ICS or OT cybersecurity. And so kind of taking that material that the team have developed based on kind of global insights and a lot of time, effort and energy over the last few years, bringing it to the Australian audience, and kind of from a Kiwi saying, well, how does this impact and relate to Australia and New Zealand, both in very different spaces from an ICS OT security perspective, across a wide variety of areas. So that's kind of the elevator pitch.
Yep. And it sounds like to me you've pretty much already got a base there already. You know, I think when you're developing the talk, and hopefully the pointers next will sort of help you formulate that. It is what's the gap? I mean, there's obviously something that you've seen that's missing, which you've identified, and you've obviously already got the points that you want to share with everybody. But then the learnings, like that last, I call it the Monday rule, which I'll talk a little bit later. What's that thing that you want everybody to walk away with at the end of the talk? What's that aha moment that you're hoping? Thank you for putting yourself on video too. Sure. You know, so that wrap up, you know, they'll walk away learning X, Y, and Z. What do you want them to walk away after seeing the talk too? Yeah,
I'm an engineer by trade, problem solver, and so again that focus on achieving outcomes is incredibly important. Yeah. And again, we teach it through SANS, we do it through our business. I also run a community group as well, where we support organisations that might not have the budget to onboard a consultant or an outside partner, but still have to defend their industrial ICS OT environment. So we're always looking for ways to enable a broad spectrum of people, regardless of whether they're brand new or really experienced. And in this case, and for often, I'm usually kind of pitching it in the intermediate, where the people that are a little bit new will rise to the challenge, and the people that are really experienced will hopefully gain some new insights or fresh insights on something that they already knew.
Mm. That sounds good. I mean, that sounds like you've already got something pretty well developed. So I don't know if Mark and Mike want to add anything to that from a AusCERT perspective as well.
I don't think there's much we can add to that. What about you, Mark? That's
Look,
pretty
it sounds
good.
like an interesting topic.
Yeah,
I'm always interested in fields where we try and boil down a million different frameworks and ideas and best practices into here's some pragmatic stuff that you can do, especially in a low budget situation. We all know that a lot of advice is pitched to organizations, not individuals necessarily. And I think there's a bit of a culture gap, but based on my limited experience in ICS security. So anything that makes the advice pragmatic and useful, I think is worthwhile.
Yeah, I suppose again, kind of with all the biases that come with the statement, I expect that AusCERT, like many conferences, will be predominantly people from that corporate enterprise environment. And so I feel like because I come from that ICS controls, operations, engineering, again, that focus on safe and reliable operations, all those things that are built into our DNA as control engineers and similar, and certainly from the functional safety side as well, that safe and reliable operations is incredibly important. So hopefully there's some useful insights there, and it sounds like I'm hopefully on the right track. But yeah, no, thanks for those comments.
Yeah, no, definitely.
We do have members from all types, though.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Members, sorry, delegates.
Yeah,
get the two mixed up.
Speak to the diversity of types of people that attend AusCERT. Based on my experience, it's extremely broad, from high-end corporate to individual consultants. Are you able to speak to that, Beck?
I don't know that I've got anything more to say than what you've just shared, to be honest. But yeah, it is very diverse in experience and where people work, let alone what their level of job is. So we do have from pure hands-on right through to management. So there is a very broad scope that you can fit within.
Yeah, and there's pretty big differences in the sizes of the organisations. So there'll be a lot of for example, small city councils that have, just a handful of staff from around Australia. And then obviously at the other end of the spectrum, you've got, large organisations with hundreds of security staff, but there is quite a big smattering of those smaller ones. So that means that you're actually able to reach a much broader audience than you're not just speaking to the corporates, I suppose, is what I'm saying. So you've got that ability to, teach some of those smaller organisations that wouldn't get exposed to this sort of stuff in their normal work, but they need to. So you actually have that opportunity to do that, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, we have an interesting thing over the side of the ditch with Three Waters and the 60 odd councils that support their water service infrastructure and work with a number of those. So yeah, it's a nice insight to kind of build into what I'm hoping to present to the group later in the year.
I might also add too, Pete, I don't know about anyone else on the call too, but when I attend really large conferences too, or any conference for that matter, I tend to watch talks that are about things that I know nothing about, simply because security is so broad. So I like to think that I'm pretty good on cloud security these days, and I'll tend to go to a cloud security talk if it's a topic that I don't think I'm so good about, so I might go and watch that to uplift my skill, especially from the ISC space. Whenever I'm going to like a Black Hat or something like that, there's so much stuff there, or drone stuff. I'm like the first in there because I want to learn and sort of understand what's going on. So I wouldn't. For me personally, I think it's probably you've got an advantage because you've got such a unique topic to talk about, and everyone will probably really be keen to see what you've got to say and share.
Cool. Thanks.
Yeah, this is something I'd go to. I like stretching my mind on things that I don't know a lot about, just like Lydia just said. I think it's great.
Yeah. Do we want to see if, yeah, no, you're so welcome. I appreciate you putting your hand up too. So, yeah, thank you. Do we want to see, I'm just thinking in the interest of time, do we want to see if anyone else wants to explore an idea, or should we keep cracking through the slides and maybe at the end see if we've got time we can do another one? I'm in your hands.
I reckon if
anyone else that would like to volunteer?
Yeah, yeah. Otherwise, we'll move on and come back.
And we can always come back, exactly.
Yep.
I think the tribe has spoken. Okay, I don't see any more hands. I'm looking. Oh, we can always come back to it anyway. But I think if you're a little bit hesitant, just think about if, unlike Peter, I think Peter's in a really good position because he's actually really thought about his topic. So it's just a matter of fleshing it out and, you know, and putting it into format ready for submission. I would imagine there's going to be others on the call that's probably thinking, I don't know where to start. So if you are in that position and you're really struggling for ideas and you don't necessarily want to put your hand up at the end, please reach out to us at the end. And again, I'm happy to jump on a phone call with you, or, you know, the AusCERT team. You know, we're definitely here to help. So all right, we'll move on to the next one. All right, so I think this is, again, this is not AusCERT specific, but I think this is just for any conference. So I won't linger on this one too much because I really want to make it about AusCERT. But I think with any conference, with any particular conference that you apply for, it's really important to understand what the conference objectives are. And I think it was really good before that Mike sort of gave an overview of what AusCERT is about. It's also really important to understand if it's an industry conference versus a community conference. They are two very different things, and you need to obviously see where you're, you know, where you lie. Is it a research-based conference and they're expecting something brand new? So talks that have never been presented before, or, you know, are we just sharing and caring? You know, like your B-sides type conference. It's really important that you know what your conference is. It might even be like an academic conference where it's got to be a brand new paper. If you're going to present something on ransomware and how to fix ransomware with backups and storage and that, it's probably not going to get accepted at a research-based conference. So it's really, really, really important for you to know what your conference audience is. And if you're still a little bit shy, we know that there's lots of sec talk type conferences all around Australia. So you can dip your feet and, you know, those sorts of things where you don't need to submit, you know, like an abstract and a presentation guide. So that's just a general overview of conferences in general. But again, I just want to really be specific for AusCERT. Beck, I might get you to flip over the next one. Typically, conferences will ask you a bunch of questions. Again, this is very generic. This was before Beck sent me the AusCERT guide, so forgive me. You would typically have an abstract or a presentation outline, and very similar to what Peter was talking about, where you talk about what the gap is, what you talk about, and, you know, what your learnings are. And then there might be another section for you to just, you know, give that verbose description of, you know, the hows and the whys of how you got there. Some conferences will ask you about, you know, is it brand new? Have you presented it before? So just be prepared for these sorts of questions. AusCERT will not ask you all these sorts of questions. But, you know, these sorts of questions may appear in some submission forms or web, you know, websites and things like that. It's all very, very conference dependent. I'm pretty sure that the next one is, yes, so let's go to the next one and talk about AusCERT. All right, so I might jump to give it over to our three lovely hosts, Beck, Mike and Mark, really quickly. They'll just go over the CFP submission, and then once we've gone through that, I really want to jump into what you need to fill in from like the abstract outline perspective. So over to you three. I'm not too sure who wants to jump on, but let's go through the form a bit.
Would you like to do the form, Beck? And while you're gearing up, I'll just mention that our committee that we use here is not just internal. So we like to maintain a degree of impartiality, and it's usually around about half AusCERT team members from the team that we have here, and half people from outside of AusCERT that have expressed an interest to be on the committee. So that sort of effectively keeps us honest, I suppose, and means that there's a lot more diversity in what gets accepted. That's just a really quick overview. Beck, do you want to talk to the what you call it, the form, that thing.
Yeah. Just to add to that program committee, what we try to do is we have people from all sorts of background in cyber. And so there's a very much a matching process, which I painstakingly do manually, where I allocate by category to our committee. So if you've got, a governance person, they'll be reviewing the more governance type submissions. So in the past, we found that, obviously, if it's not of interest to you, your ratings are going to be skewed because it's not something that's relevant to your experience and what you're looking for. So there is a lot that goes in the background that you're probably not aware of in the past. Yeah, so the first part is relatively self-explanatory. You need to tell us who you are. So it's providing your contact details. Then we move into putting in title, and yeah, so we start to go into types. So there is a separate portal this year for the tutorials versus our actual presentations. In the past, they've been one, and people have gotten quite confused along the way, and then we've had to go, is this meant to be a tutorial? Is this meant to be a presentation? So trying to get a bit more of a clear line there. So yeah, moving on. Fitting into our themes and categories, and also asking for a technical level. So don't be put off if your technical level is low. We are looking for all levels. It's just so that we can let attendees of your session have a level of expectation. They need to know whether they, if they're entry level, they want to know that they're going to come in and learn. They're not going to come to something high level if they don't know anything about your topic. Yep, still continuing on about the presenters and what their position is. If you've got multiple presenters, you can add them in there as well. Then we actually get into the presentation details. So we've just increased this word limit to 1,000 yesterday. So I did get some feedback, and thank you, Lydia, for being really open about that, about people feeling quite restricted in how much content they can provide there. So for us in that box, you're going to include your actual abstract that we'd share on the website to promote your session. But if you've got other notes that you'd like the committee to know, that's a really useful spot to put in there. And feel free, we will not copy and paste the entire thing onto the website. We're very smart. We can do the abstract versus what your notes are for the rest of the committee. And look, along the way, if you find that you're restricted and you've got more information, also feel free to email conference@AusCERT, because I can add that in manually when we're reviewing. Then we ask you to upload your photos. We talk about your target audience, about who would benefit from attending your presentation. But don't get stuck on any of these fields. They're just to give us a better idea about your presentation. So if you're feeling like it's a lot of pressure, it doesn't have to be full abstract details, and these simple words is really easy. Tutorials, and you can change some of these later on down the track. This just helps us to understand, when we're setting up our AV, whether we can video and what will happen post-conference. Now, the bottom question is a new one that we've added with the help of Lydia this year, where we can match you with a mentor. So particularly for first-time presenters, this is a great opportunity to have someone allocated to you in that process. If you're successful, of course, someone will help you along the way in the lead up to the conference. It's not, they're not going to write the presentation for you, but it's a sounding board to make sure that you're on the right track and to give you some opportunities to practice and help guide the actual content to make sure that you're hitting the right parts that you intended to. There you go. Back to you, Lydia.
Back to me. All right, thanks, Beck. So that helps me model this a little bit more. So we spoke before, I might actually use Peter as an example, if that's okay, Peter. We spoke about putting together whether we call it abstract, presentation outline, and we know in AusCERT it's a content box, and Beck's increased that. So thank you, Beck, for doing that. I think, again, some places call it abstract or presentation outline, but I think what's really important here is if you look at the first bullet point, that's what gets published. Okay, that's what gets bums on seats. Americans hate it when I say bums on seats, and I use it all the time. But that's what gets bums on seats, and it's there to spark people's curiosity. And I basically say this is the blurb of the back of a book. You pick up the Harry Potter in a bookstore, or you pick up a book, and the first thing you do is you go straight to the back of that book, and you go, oh, I'm going to go buy this book, or you go watch the latest the latest trailer of something. Oh, I've got to go watch that movie. This is your blurb. This is your opportunity to make someone read that blurb and go, oh, I've got to really go watch this. You know, before when Peter was talking about, you know, the ISC stuff, I would absolutely want to watch that because I don't know much about it. I want to learn something about it. So it's when you read back your abstract, you need to ask yourself the question, would you attend this talk? I think it's really, really, really important to read it because sometimes I've seen, and I'll talk about do's and don'ts later, where I see bio that's, I'm not kidding, 2 or 3 paragraphs long and the abstract is 1 sentence. You want to put your attention here because this is what's going to get people to come and say, okay, I really want to say this. It's not that nobody cares about who you are. When I read papers, I actually really don't care who the submitter is. I don't want to know. I want to know what the content is. I want to know if it's going to be exciting to the people that are going to come to the conference. So it's really, really, really important that you put the time into this. So Beck, I might get you to move to the next slide. And I'm still focusing on that this content stage. So this content stage of the draft is now. I say there's 3 sections. It could be 1 paragraph, it could be 2 paragraphs, it could be 3 paragraphs, it could be 4. It all depends on you. But if you break it up into these three things, this is where I see a lot of success. So I might even use Back to the Future as an example because it's my favourite movie of all time, and I'm basically saying, what's your movie trailer? So if you look at Back to the Future, the problem statement might be, you know, everyone's always wanted to get back, you know, go back to the future, but we know the technology doesn't exist. What's the hook? What's the thing that's drawing, you know, that's making people go, oh, I faced this problem, right? And then the next sentence might be, in this talk, we're going to discuss how we created a flux capacitor and how we did this and how we did that. So you're selling the bits and pieces of how you solve the problem. The audience will walk away knowing how to create their own flux capacitor, or we created a tool that's going to be able to search for these vulnerabilities in open source code, whatever it is, you know. So you're basically putting that hook there to say, okay, they're going to walk away. So what you're doing is you're giving the review board an idea of what the problem is. So, you know, people are going to go, well, we know that there's a gap here, or it might be, hey, we're going to, you know, we're stuck in lockdown, or for those that are in Melbourne, we're stuck in lockdown, not those who are in Queensland, to my Queensland friends there, or New Zealand friends, but Melbourne, we were like in lockdown forever. And, you know, you've got all this time on your hands, and in this talk, we're going to teach you how to build your own network. So, you know, you talk about the things and people will walk away with a secure system or whatever it is. So I always look for these 3 things when I'm evaluating a talk, because I think it's really important that you've grasped your own subject. You know what the problem was that you were trying to solve. Even if it's a fun home thing, you might just be curious about what's going through your Wi-Fi network. You're at home, you don't know what your logs are. You might want to know what's going through your home network. You might want to know if anyone's tapping into your Wi-Fi network, you know. And so you discussed how you did it and how they too can do the same things that you did to be able to figure out what's going on there. So you're basically setting your own trailer. What I've got next is 4 examples of what I think are different abstracts, but good abstracts, but they all deliver on the same message. So Beck, I might get you to move down to the next one. Okay, this is one that was submitted to a B-Sides, and again, not a very big abstract, right? But if you have a look at what I call the first thing is, they start off by saying, have you ever been stuck in an airport and you've run out of free Wi-Fi? Or have you ever been in a hotel that makes you pay for Wi-Fi? They've already got you and they're going, oh yeah, that's happened to me so many times. In our talk's going to help you understand the flaws, the captive portals, blah, 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 blah. Finally, we're going to talk about the development of, you know, multi-authentication framework. So they're telling you what they're going to talk about. Finally, at the end, this talk brings concepts, blah, 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 blah. Our audience should gain a good understanding of the most common weaknesses and targets, blah, 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 blah. So you can see how they're breaking it up into all those different sections so that they've grabbed you at the start. They're going to tell you what they're going to talk about, and then they're going to leave you with the good stuff, the goodness at the end. Stuff that you can take away, which is what I call the Monday rule. Which somebody actually taught me the Monday rule, so I can't take credit for that. Beck, I'll get you to go down to another example. This one's an even smaller one, but it still gets to the point. So this particular speaker is talking about the missing persons competition. So in October, blah, 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 you can see that they're talking about the first competition, and then they talk about you know, the selling points. Have you've been intrigued by it, blah, blah, blah. And then if this is you, come and join the speaker. She talks about AusCERT and how you can leverage and find missing persons as well. So you know that you're going to walk away with some knowledge on how to help finding missing persons using, you know, their capture the flag competition. Let's move to another one. I'll move to the next slide. So this is for quite a large conference, so you can see the abstract is a little bit bigger. I don't imagine AusCERT will want yours to be this big, but again, the same deal. So this person's talking about burnout. So they start off with the hook. Research shows computer security professionals describe blah, 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 blah. And you can see that here the speaker's putting in some stats. So they're getting you with that hook at the start. And then she turns around and says, this talk's going to discuss existing research, and you can read it for yourself. I'm sure we'll share the slides, but she's basically talking about things that you're going to see during this talk. All right, so they're the selling points. And what are you going to learn? You're going to leave this talk with a better understanding of what happens to you if burnout happens, how you can manage your relationships, blah, blah, blah. So you read this feeling quite good to think, oh, you know, I'm feeling this too. Oh, there's some really big stats. She's going to talk about these things that really hits home with me. And I'm going to have some tools to help me manage burnout in my day-to-day life as an InfoSec person. Really good stuff. Let's move to another one, Beck. This is one that I saw on the AusCERT page, I think on 2021. Yeah. I think this hit home with me a little bit because I'm looking at medical devices myself. But again, it was, you know, it's straight to the point. The speaker here talks about the issues with medical devices, and so maybe putting in something here like, you know, if you're a patient, you know, you don't want to get hacked, you don't want to get injected with something, but you're basically selling the story. There's the hook, there's the issues with the medical device. And then the selling point is that the presenter is going to present an overview of the landscapes and the risks. So again, if you're interested in medical devices, that's going to really set the scene, and the learning is they're going to provide practical solutions every day so that they can be implemented in a healthcare environment in a secure manner. So if you're working in healthcare, you know, this might be something that you'd be really keen to see. And the speakers really well presented those three areas: hook, selling point, and what you're going to learn. Right. So that's before I move on to the unpublished side. So I think, Beck, I might just get you to move up just again before the examples. One more. So when you're putting your piece together that's going to get published, just think about those things. You can see those examples. None of them are perfect. They're not symmetrically done one paragraph at a time or whatever. Sometimes I see a lot about the gap at the start and one sentence that describe what the talk is going to be about and what you're going to learn. It doesn't really matter. I've read a lot of AusCERT submissions over the last 48 hours, and they're all different, but they all get there in some way. They're all really good. I think what's really important that those that are submitting, you know, you talk about, you know, what your passion is, what the gap was about, why you were looking at that, and basically how you solved it, or maybe you're still solving it, but practical things that people can walk away with. And that's what, you know, that's what we refer to as the Monday rule, or your learning, or, you know, some of you might know Emily Edgley. She talks about the gift. What gift are you leaving them with? You know, I'm a really big fan for that, because I feel that if I don't get up and talk and leave them with something that they can use, I feel like I've failed. But that's just me. So, you know, have a think about that. You know, you're sharing your knowledge. That's what it's about. That's the gift. You sharing your knowledge, and it might be just tips and tricks. It might be a tool. It could be a framework, but, you know, something that you can share and people can walk away and they feel like they've got great value from what you've spoken about. I might just stop there for a second before I move to the next section, because I know that was a lot. Does anyone have any questions about that? I suppose that initial content that will be published. Okay, we'll move back. I might get to move to the more details, presentation more details. So Beck mentioned that in that content section, you've obviously got space to put your abstract or your overview. there are times when conferences might say to you, do you want to add any more details? Or it might be, we want more details. So if you're talking about a topic that's, I suppose, very research-based, or you just want them to know that you've got the background and the expertise to know what you're talking about, you could add more stuff. So it's typically not published. It's basically where you would put extra things to show that you've done the research, you've done the experience. Maybe you've had to detonate thousands of pieces of malware to get what you know. Maybe you're talking about some testing that you've done, and you might say, I've spent over 100 hours doing this. You know, it's not just some high level thing in my mind. Or maybe from the burnout talk, you might have interviewed 1,000 people, but you may not put that in your abstract, you know. So it's just, you're backing yourself, but it helps the reviewers to understand where you're coming from and what you're talking about is solid. So you may want to add that just so that you can give them more perspective about the topic that you're talking about. So really up to you. Beck, I might get you to move to the next one. All right, so do's and don'ts of when you submit. I always say your bio should not be longer than your submission. I've seen that so many times. It's a bit of a joke, but I guess what I'm saying is we're interested in what you've got to talk about, not that you've got, you know, that you've been in security for 100 years and you've got all these certs. That's great, but make sure you spend the time on your submission. You know, your bio is great. If the content is great, it'll get accepted, you know, even if you've got a 1-sentence bio. Something that I always joke around, but you get the point. If submission looks like you've spent 1 minute to write it, that's probably how long you've spent writing it. Spend the time writing it, thinking about it, reading it back. Is it that blurb that you read at the back of a bookstore? Is it that trailer that you see? Give it to a friend and say, does it make sense? It doesn't need to be War and Peace. Don't sell stuff. That's really important too. Don't sell anything. You're there to share. If you're not sure, give it to one of us. I'm happy to read it. I still do it today. I still lack my own confidence going, is it good enough? Have I ticked all the boxes? And I don't feel like you just have to keep it to yourself. You know, definitely get that feedback if you're not too sure. It all helps. Becca, I might get you to move to the next one. All right, and I always say know your audience. So there's no point submitting a talk to a conference where it's not, you know, not a good fit. Have fun and just be you. I think that's really important. And I've already said it. Make sure you get peer review. Go to you know, get peer review from your friends or people that you trust in the industry. I think that's really, really important. And the one thing that I always say, and someone gave me this advice many years ago when I didn't want to submit to a conference. They said, don't be the judge and jury of your own work. Let the conference decide. Don't go, oh, I can't submit to AusCERT because it's AusCERT. It's such a big deal. I don't want to submit to AusCERT. Let them decide. Every year it's a different theme. You just don't know. You don't know. Might move to the next slide. Back. Yep, perfect. I've already spoke before about accept versus decline. So I think that's really important. So if your talk does get declined, it's not rejected. I can't stand that word, you know, it's conference fit. I'll jump to AusCERT for a second. I don't know if you guys want to talk about, Becky, I know you spoke about the review process, so maybe, I don't know if you've got anything else you want to add, or if anyone wants feedback. I might just hand over to you all just to see if you want to add anything to this.
One important thing to remember, I guess, is everyone knows everyone in the cybersecurity industry. And there have been plenty of examples when we've sort of thought that talk's not going to work at AusCERT. It's just the wrong conference for that talk to be at. But we know, you know, B-Sides Melbourne, we know the Crikey people up here in Brisbane. So, you know, a quick message to them going, this talk could probably work at your conference. So like a rejection, it's not a rejection, it's just a, this talk is probably better at someone else's conference. Think of it that way.
Yeah, and
it could just other ways we've done it in the past is we've been able to do member events throughout the year as well. So a couple of times I've been able to approach people and go, would you be prepared to do it here for us? And so we can meet different ways. So we only have limited speaking slots. That's part of the issue that we're dealing with. We'd love to expand the program, but you know, we've got limited rooms, we've got limited days. So yeah, I really like your message there about it's not a rejection, it's a decline.
Yeah. That's a really good point about the availability of the speaking slots too. I think just based on the space we have at the venue, and you know, Beck's done a lot to make this conference what it is, and we don't want to change it. We don't want to go to a huge, big, you know, convention centre type venue where you'd have 20 rooms, because that just loses the what's the word I'm looking for? The soul of the AusCERT conference. So we only have the 4 rooms running concurrently, and that obviously limits what we can accept. So I think in the past we've had you know, acceptance ratio of like 1 in 6 or 7. I think, is that about 1 in 6 or 7? So I mean, that like it's kind of a shame, but that's just to keep the soul of the conference. And we, you know, when we're in the call for papers committee meeting, you can actually see, you know, there's sort of that line where you have to draw and go, well, we've got no more slots, and you can see all of the ones that it's like, oh geez, I really wish those could get in. But yeah, as
diversity
we have
of subjects,
other ways,
so it's us trying to get that spread across those categories and make sure there's something for everyone attending. So yeah, it's not just is this a good submission? There's a lot more to it.
Yeah.
And we do end up accepting a lot of first-time speakers. Just, you know, taking into account the acceptance rates that Mike mentioned, we still end up with a lot of first-time speakers. If there's a topic that's really interesting and we think has a place, we'll make a place for it.
Yeah, and I think we even noticed that in B-Sides Melbourne last year. I was going to say this year, last year, that there was the line in the sand that we had to draw simply because we just didn't have the slots. You know, and as a committee member, you're like, this is heartbreaking, because you have to actually say no to somebody whose talk is so damn good, and you just don't have the space. So it's so many conferences, and that's why I always say to people, don't give up. You got to keep going. It'll eventually get there, but it doesn't mean that it's poo. I'm literally just going to call it out. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that at all. You know, I've had so many declines, you know, and the odd accept, and you celebrate it, and you celebrate those that get accepted as well, because it's a big deal. And I might, Beck, just add on the mentoring piece, because I didn't add this on here. Whether you're a first-time speaker or, you know, a seasoned speaker, I mean, up to you. And I don't know what AusCERT is offering in terms of the mentoring, but even me, I always seek feedback, because there's always things that I miss. You know, and it's good always to get another lens on what you're doing. I have to admit, I love mentoring first-time speakers. They're just an absolute joy to work with, because you just love seeing them go from a bundle of nerves to like, yeah, I've got this, you know. So first-time speakers are great, but as so is seasoned speakers too, because you know, everyone's scared, and that's why I put those photos of me at the start. I'm still scared. I'm still scared even presenting this presentation today, to be perfectly honest. I know it's crazy, but it's human nature, right?
I think it's healthy. It means you're human, Lydia.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. Yeah, so I think if you've got any questions, regardless of the outcome, you know, good, bad, or otherwise, you know, definitely reach out and seek feedback. I think any conference that's willing to give you feedback is a conference worth talking to and talking at. If a conference doesn't respond to those sorts of things, I, you know, personally would think twice about talking to them, because it's community focused, and if it's community focused, you need to make sure that you're community minded too. And we know, you know, AusCERT's like that. So it's you know, it's a really positive thing. So I might just wrap up, move to the next slide.
Did we have a hand up just before? I just thought I saw someone's hand up, but it went away. So anyway, go on.
Yeah, no, all good. What's next? So I suppose in wrap up, because we've got 7 minutes to go. For those who are still thinking about what you want to talk about, you know, feel free to brainstorm something. Feel free to come to any of us. Beck, if anyone wants my help, I'm very happy for you to put them in touch with me. And, you know, the AusCERT crew are absolutely willing to help you guys as well. Look at past accepted talks as well for AusCERT, although I did see a hand up disappeared. There we go. I'll stop, and I think, Patrick, did you have a question? it down.
What's gone again? Patrick?
Yep. That's okay. All right, if you're keen.
I've just allowed microphone.
Okay, thanks. No question. I was just going to say thanks for the talk. It was good.
You're welcome.
Sparked some inspiration.
Oh, awesome. That's good. Well, hopefully you're going to submit. submit.
I'll just jump in real quick and just point out a link I pasted in the chat. It's I decided to crowdsource the question of what do you love about conference presentations? What would you prefer not to see about conference presentations? And it's like it's basically like a bunch of post-it notes stuck on a digital wall. So if you see that link in the chat and have a look at it, you might get some good tips there. Otherwise, hit me up on LinkedIn. Go on, Lydia.
No, that's really it. So I always say, especially because we're speaking specifically about AusCERT, you know, do have a look at past topics, past talks that have been presented, past talks that have been published. Maybe have a chat to past speakers about their experience as well. You know, and that'll sort of help you be able to put things together as well. I think the last slide, Beck, is just my fun questions slide, so nothing too exciting. This is I love that. That's my favorite. I always put that in there. That's me when my kids aren't coming into the room. Yeah, but obviously the top part is covered. All right, that's it. Any questions? 5 minutes to spare. We did good, guys.
Oh, we have got, I think Peter's saying that he can't see. Are you able to put that link to Padlet in the discussion in the Q&A, Mark?
In the Q&A. Let's try that.
So
Otherwise,
maybe
like I
we
said,
can see
it's
the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Otherwise, it's in on LinkedIn, but I'll post it in the Q&A. There we go.
Will the slides be available? If anyone wants the slides, I'm absolutely happy to send them. No problems.
I'll share the recording from this and the slides and Mark's Padlet after this as well.
I'll rip them to PDF, Beck, or I think you can do it anyway because you've got a copy. Yep. Thank you for everyone who joined. I really appreciate you taking the time out in your day to do it. It means a lot.
Thank you for giving us your time, Lydia. We're really appreciative, especially considering it is midnight for you.
It's 1 in the morning, but I'm just pretending.
Oh yeah, it was midnight when we started.
It's now 1 in the morning.
Thank you so
much. Do you know? I feel perfectly fine. I'm good. I'm really good. So
wow,
I'll say that in a minute. I'll just be like. No, all good. Thanks, Grant. I appreciate you joining too.
Lovely.
Thanks, Patrick.
All right.